Hey there, fellow explorer, and welcome to a special Espirito edition of the Deep Dive.
Espirito.
Yeah, Espirito Deep, you could say.
I like that.
You know, it's Italian for expert, so we're
Oh,
taking our expertise to the next level for you today. All right, buckle up, because today we're taking a deep dive into Macau. And trust me, this is way more than just casinos and bright lights.
yeah, it really is.
We're going to uncover what truly makes this place tick. Get ready. It might surprise you.
Macau is a city of fascinating contradictions, that's for sure.
Oh, yeah.
It's one of the most densely populated places on Earth,
Right.
but at the same time, it's a global gambling giant. And it's got this incredibly unique blend of Chinese and Portuguese cultures.
Yeah, it's so interesting how all those things come together in one place.
Right.
So we've been digging through a ton of sources, Wikipedia articles, historical records, geographical data,
Cool.
all sorts of things to really help us peel back the layers of Macau's story.
It's a really interesting story, actually. It was a European colony for over 400 years.
Oh, that's a long time.
Yeah. And then it was handed back to China in 1999.
So that history, it's shaped what Macau is today, and it's going to keep influencing its future, too.
It will.
Okay, so right off the bat, something that just blew my mind was the population density.
Yeah.
Over 21,000 people per square kilometer.
It's wild, isn't it?
That's twice as dense as Manhattan.
Makes you wonder how people even function there.
I know. How do you even walk down the street?
Right.
It's just mind-boggling.
Oh.
And then, get this. 2/3 of Macau's land was reclaimed from the sea.
Really?
Like, they needed more space, so they just went and created it from the sea. Ambitious. Right?
It is ambitious.
But it also makes you think,
Yeah.
Sustainability-wise, was that a necessity or a bit of a gamble with the environment?
That's the big question, isn't it? I mean, it shows just how far Macau has gone to deal with its booming population and economy. But yeah, there are definitely potential environmental consequences to think about with that kind of rapid development.
It's a gamble, for sure, putting all your chips on one industry. You know what I mean?
Right.
What happens if tourism takes a hit? Or if people's tastes change? Is Macau prepared for that?
Yeah. And that leads us to another big part of Macau. The casinos.
Oh, for sure.
The gaming industry there. It's massive. Bigger than Vegas, even.
Seriously.
Yeah. Wow. It makes more revenue than any other gambling hub in the world.
You can't even talk about Macau without mentioning the casinos, but
You can.
it does make you wonder about, the potential downsides of being so reliant on one industry.
Absolutely. It definitely makes Macau's economy more vulnerable to things like changes in tourism or, shifts in global gambling trends. And, there's the social impact to consider, too. Things like wealth disparity, problem gambling. Those are all very real concerns.
Right. So the casinos are a huge part of Macau's story, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But it sounds like there's a whole other side to explore.
Yeah.
One that's been shaped by, its history and this unique mix of cultures.
Exactly. We're talking centuries of Portuguese influence blending with Chinese traditions.
Wow.
So you have things like Portuguese architecture right alongside Chinese temples. You have the Macanese cuisine, which is like its own unique blend of East and West. It's really a cultural melting pot.
That's so cool. And, it's recognized by UNESCO as a World Heritage Site, which is pretty amazing.
It is.
And wait, they have their own passports.
I do, yeah.
That's really interesting. So this autonomy that they have, that's fascinating. But where's the line? What about defense, for example?
Yeah, that's a good question. When it comes to defense, things get a little tricky in Macau.
Okay.
Technically, the People's Liberation Army, they're responsible for Macau's defense.
The PLA.
Yeah, the PLA, exactly. And they even have a garrison station there.
So ultimately, China has the final say when it comes to protecting Macau.
Yeah, you could say that, but it's not as simple as it seems.
Oh,
The Macau government can actually request help from the PLA if they need to.
interesting.
And another thing, unlike mainland China Macau residents, they don't have to serve in the military.
That's a pretty big difference.
It is.
So it sounds like Macau has a good amount of autonomy within China.
They do.
But how does this one country, two systems thing, how does it actually work in everyday life?
Wow.
Are there noticeable differences between Macau and mainland China?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. The atmosphere in Macau, it's just different. One of the most obvious differences is the freedom of speech and assembly.
Right.
People in Macau, they can openly criticize the government. That's not something you see very often in mainland China.
Yeah, that makes sense. So this one country, two systems model, it's not just some abstract idea.
No,
It actually has a real impact on people's lives.
it really does. And it goes beyond just freedom of speech.
Okay.
People in Macau, they really trust their local government.
Interesting.
And you wouldn't necessarily find that sentiment in other parts of China.
It's fascinating. It seems like Macau has managed to create its own identity within China.
They have.
But this whole setup, is it permanent? How long can this balancing act between autonomy and integration, how long can it last?
Well, that is the million-dollar question, isn't it? The agreement, the way it stands now, it's set to expire in 2049. What happens after that, nobody really knows.
2049, that's not that far away. It's like a countdown almost.
It is.
Adds another layer of complexity to Macau's story.
Definitely.
Speaking of complexity, I know we talked about the gambling industry earlier,
Uh-huh.
but are there any other challenges facing Macau? I mean, it can't all be perfect, right?
You're right. There are definitely some issues beneath the surface. One big concern